So we're talking about benching. Yesterday we talked about the 4 blessings. So today let's go a little bit deeper inside into the benching. So on page 90 in the Siddur, you'll notice we have the first and second, the first half of the second blessing. Now the blessings, remember we mentioned that the blessing after a meal, thanking God for giving us food and for sustaining us and for sating us. So that is one of the commandments in the Torah. So the verse says, we're actually going to be reading it in a couple of weeks, you should eat, you'll eat and you'll be sated, uveirachta, and you will bless, as Hashem Elokecha, God your God, al ha'aretz ha'tova, on the good land, asher nasa lach, which he has given you. Okay? So that's the verse that is the source text for this idea of the blessing after meals. Specifically, the sages taught that this first blessing, the first paragraph here of benching, was composed by Moses. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when the Jewish people were in the desert and they were hungry, manna started falling from heaven. Right? It's interesting that Moses, when the manna fell from heaven, Moses composes this first blessing, which talks about God sustaining and nourishing everyone and everything. So even in the desert and the wilderness, where there was no food, God provided food. The food fell from heaven. So that's the first blessing, which was established, composed by Moses, when the Jewish people receive the manna, when the manna starts falling in the desert. The second blessing, Noida Lecha, we offer thanks to you. So this blessing, what do we say? We offer thanks for what? For the land, the good land which you have given to us, to our ancestors as an inheritance, right? So the second blessing is about the land of Israel. This blessing was composed and established by Joshua, Moses' successor, right? Joshua, who upon entering the land of Israel establishes this blessing. So we have the first blessing of Hazan, which was established by Moses. The second blessing, which is Noida Lecha, the thanks for the land, which was established by Joshua. And let's move ahead to the third blessing, Rachem Hashem Elokeinu al Yisrael Amecha, have mercy upon your people Israel, and continue Va'al Yerushalayim Irachan, and your city Jerusalem, right? And Al Tzion Mishkan Kvedecha, and on Zion, right, which is the abode of your glory. So this blessing was established by King David and King Solomon. So King David, when he establishes Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people, so he composes this blessing. And when King Solomon built the temple after his father's passing, so then King Solomon added the part here about the Tzia Mishkan Kvedecha, the Zion, the Mount Zion, which is where the temple was stood. And then the blessing ends, to rebuild Jerusalem, right? Because obviously we're talking about Jerusalem, so we want to rebuild Jerusalem. So these are the three blessings that were composed in what you would call biblical times, right? The times Moses, Joshua, David, and Solomon are all very big personalities in the Bible. Moses in the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, Joshua in the book of Joshua, and King David and Solomon primarily in the book of Kings and the book of Samuel, the book of Kings, and then many other places as well. So these are the 3 sort of biblically mandated blessings. In fact, the Talmud talks about where these blessings originated from. So in addition to their composer, where can you find them alluded to in the verse? So Achalta v'savata uveirachta, as Hashem Elokecha, bless God your God. So the first one, blessing God your God, that was the first blessing established by Moses. Al ha'aretz, al ha'aretz, for the land, that's the land of Israel. Ha'toiva, that's good, I think that's the third blessing, the blessing about Jerusalem. And because these are the 3 sort of biblically composed and inspired blessings, so therefore this is really the end of the blessing after meals in a biblical sense, put it that way. And therefore we end Uvnei Yerushalayim, we end with the word Amen. Okay, why do we end with the word Amen? We mentioned yesterday that we don't respond Amen to our own blessings. Amen is an affirmation of what you just said. So it makes no sense for a person to recite a blessing and then to say, I affirm what I just said. You just said it. Obviously you affirm what you said because you're the one who said it. It's really for others to respond and to affirm and to concur with what it is that you said. And Amen is a very important thing to say, especially when you're somebody praising God, blessing God, acknowledging God. It's very important to say Amen, but not for the one who made the blessing. The exception is Uvnei Yerushalayim, this blessing here, the third blessing of the blessing after meal, starting with Rachem, which concludes Uvnei Yerushalayim here on the bottom of page 92. Why? Why did they establish to say Amen after our own blessing? To to put a stop in between the first three blessings and the fourth blessing which follows, to differentiate, to distinguish between these three blessings established by Moses, Joshua, David, and Solomon, and the next blessing which was established by the sages much later. That we'll get into the fourth blessing of the blessing of Torah. We'll get into, God willing, tomorrow. But I just wanted to finish today with one other point. You see a lot of gray here, right? So there's the gray boxes here on page 92, top gray box, and then the middle gray box, and then you have on page 90 on the bottom, which spills over to page 91, another gray box. So let's go start with the first one. So during Hanukkah or Purim, we know that we have a special insertion that we add to the prayers. So it's not only to the prayers, it's also to the blessing after meals, the biblically mandated blessing that we recite after meals. We have to acknowledge and mention the day. So on Hanukkah and Purim, we mention the miracles of those days of Hanukkah or Purim. And when do we mention it? Similar to when we mention it in the Amidah. In the Amidah, on Hanukkah and Purim, the special insertion, this exact prayer, is mentioned in the blessing of Modim, the blessing of thanksgiving. That's the sages, it's not for now, they basically determined that's the appropriate place to acknowledge the miracles that God performs for us is in the blessing of thanksgiving. Therefore, it's added in Modim, and when we recite the blessing after meals, we add it here in the blessing of Noda L'cha, again, offering thanks. It's a blessing of thanksgiving to God. So that's why that's here. And then we have the additions on page 92, which are Ritzei, B'achlitzenu, may it please you, and this is a blessing all about the Shabbos. And then you have Ya'alav Yavo, which of course we're all familiar with Ya'alav Yavo as well, which is for special days like Rosh Chodesh and for the holidays. So these blessings are added in the blessing of Rachem, right? In the third blessing of Rachem, these additions are added. So on Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's important when we recite the blessing after meals that we make these proper insertions. And these insertions, since they are significant, they mention the date. The laws are not exactly the same for depending on when you forget to add it in the blessing after meals, but it's possible to have to repeat the blessing because we have to mention the significance of that day, either Shabbos with that first paragraph of 92, or the festival in the second paragraph of 92. And if you forgot to add this, so if you remembered at some point during the benching, during the blessing after meal, you can recite an additional version. That's page 93, this gray box of page 93 that everybody always skips because we don't have it, it's only said if you forget those paragraphs on page 92, so then you would add this in its appropriate place as per the instructions on the page. So that's what page 93 is about. God willing, tomorrow we'll talk about page 94 and the fourth blessing of blessing after meals.